Oh my god, dude, I'm freaking out. I am so stressed out. I feel like I'm having a panic attack.
You want to talk about stress? You want to talk about stress? Okay? I've stumbled on a major Arkham conspiracy here. How's that for stress?
What the hell are you talking about?
Check this out. Take a look at this.
Jesus Christ.
That right there is the subreddit. Now let's talk about the subreddit. Can we talk about the subreddit, please? I've been dying to talk about the subreddit with you all day. Our comics crossover. This phrase keeps coming up over and over again. Every day, new meta posts keep getting pushed to me. Comics crossover, comics crossover. I look at this subreddit, this whole sub is our comics crossover. On August 3rd, 2023, Pizza Cake Comic made a post on the R Comic subreddit about her struggles as an artist. And this was followed by a huge outpouring of support from commenters and artists who responded with their own comics. And then more artists responded with more comics. And then more. And then even more. As of writing this script, the R Comics Impromptu Crossover 2023 mega thread lists 52 different artists and their comics as part of the event. This is a great and fairly comprehensive list, but there's still several more posts that slip through the cracks. And I tried to gather every contributor to the saga, big or small, thousands of upvotes or only 2, and I ended up with at least 80 contributors in total. As far as tracing the story of this big ol' event, well, yeah. There were plenty of developing side stories, props, and smaller happenings that were folded into the overarching plot. So let's get a bit of spatial awareness first. The majority stick to representing R Comics as a giant light blue room with at least one entrance door out into a yellow hallway. This hallway presumably has other doors that lead to various other subreddits. Funny enough, Get a Grip Comics probably provided the best idea of where this all took place, and I only included their post because of a passing mention to the collab. They imagine Reddit as a massive building with floors dedicated to specific interests, like the comics department. The character even passes signs for other subreddits like R Webcomics. Most of the cartoons follow this general setting. Well, it's either that or the R Comics Multiverse collided in some temporal landscape like Landmine Flip-Flop suggested, but we'll circle back to that idea. Keep it in our back pocket for now. So, great, we've got our setting. Now, the timeline of events. I took into consideration when each comic was posted, what characters were present, and how they connected to past and future comics. It's the least messy way I could structure things from a storytelling standpoint. I will run a whole list of the comics in order of when they were posted at the end of the video. Speaking of the end of the video, you might want to stick around for it. A lot of you guys really enjoyed my interview with Pizza Cake Comics, and I have another one in the works that I think you might all be interested in. Back to the crossover, I just want to say a lot of this is my interpretation. I tried to stick as close as possible to the narratives laid out in each comic, but this was over 80 different non-coordinated artists trying to tell the same or separate narratives. You can't fit them all together in any watertight way. I went with the narrative that all these characters inhabit the quote-unquote same universe, something like the Cartoon Network bumpers where Samurai Jack could be doing his laundry next to the Powerpuff Girls. You could easily interpret it as this big room being some big multiversal collision point, or you could ignore all of that and be like, nobody cares. We started with the initial setup from the first 3 comics. Pizza Cake drew in a sympathetic crowd, Bombs wisely tried to slip out a meta commentary, but Ghost Cat called attention to it, causing the crowd to turn their attention from Pizza Cake and rush to prop up Wisely. So they're all at the center of a massive crowd of Redditors casting upvotes and awards left and right all over the place. Of course, this caused quite the commotion. It attracted onlookers, other characters from across the webcomic scene. Some of the more common happenings during this whole crossover were people poking their heads into the common area and then just moving on. Quite Adept's boxy-headed character was one of the first onlookers. Just like a lot of visitors to the subreddit, Adept's character didn't know what was going on, and he did some investigating. He inquired Ghost Cat, which led him to Wisely, and finally arrived at Pizza Cake, a sobbing mess. Brian Wonderful and Hacky and Bird were equally confused by the unfolding events, but for very different reasons. Observing from the sidelines, Radix and EO could see what was coming next. This was only the beginning, and they knew things were about to get much more out of control. Portuguese Geese was part of that first day wave as his green cheeked up character burst into the common area with the return of fan favorite character Jeeves, only to get absolutely flooded out by a wave of reactions and awards. In this physicalized version of the R Comics subreddit, upvotes, downvotes, and awards were all physical too. And the absolute onslaught of them for Pizza Cake, Wisely, Ghost Cat, and the other meta entries caused a couple natural disasters. Well, I guess not natural disasters, but that's the best I can describe it. At least Victor Gnarly's Mushroom Cloud theme didn't catch on. Otherwise, things could have taken a very Oppenheimer turn. Portuguese Geese promptly bailed from the situation, temporarily, as the Poland ball rolled in to check out what was going on. User the one who shall not be named's character was also caught up in the flood of reacts, while Wintry Mix saw them manifest as a blazing wildfire. She had heard of our comics and decided, what the heck, I should check it out. So she grabbed her original characters and headed to the common area, only to stop at the door, completely overwhelmed. Helmet Dude, clearly long desensitized to this level of Reddit madness, stepped up next to her with a bucket of popcorn. Wouldn't recommend going in there. While her venture into the R Comics common area didn't go as expected, her post blew up more than she anticipated. The attention clearly distracted her though, leaving her original characters a bit annoyed. Luckily, the disaster side of things died down as quickly as it came, but other shenanigans were ramping up further inside the common area. While plenty of characters looked and passed on by, one of the first side stories to take off started with the Red Dot and her sentient plug Gary. If that statement is weird to hear, imagine saying it out loud. They were observing the madness from this podium thing behind the crowd, accompanied by an overly curious Heracross. That group wasn't alone back there though. My character, Addie the zombie girl, had heard the commotion and took the chance to introduce herself, and get a picture of the event while she was at it. So she snapped the first of many selfies and was still seen taking pictures in a comic from... Jesus, some of these usernames. Off to Addie's left, the cloaked figure from Glue Guy's comic planned on getting in on the accolades swarming around the subreddit, only to be chastised for taking advantage of Piece of Cake's situation. This pretty common criticism for the whole thing was echoed by Maurice the Beaver from Graceland West comic, but I already covered the more controversial side of things in my first video about this event. Shortly after Addie started taking pictures, Natrix, the anthropomorphic rat character from Alexander Yuz, this user, snuck her way into the common area and slipped behind Dot's podium. While Dot and Gary were trying not to look like assholes, Natrix intended to look like the biggest asshole she could, and she wasn't even the only one with that idea. Another lurker, Axolotls, slid next to Natrix, just wanting to be a part of things. And by the next day, the duo became a trio when a dapper fellow crept his way over to the podium, asking if there's any space left for him. So here's Dot and Gary trying to figure out how to join the craziness without looking like total jerks, when suddenly a hand appeared from out of nowhere to snag Gary away, and he was promptly loaded as ammunition. See, Inquirity had an answer to their question, albeit an unconventional one involving Spez, who was overseeing the event. As a little tangent here, Reddit CEO Steve Huffman, username Spez, had recently made some decisions at the time that Redditors were not fans of. Of course, everyone had calm, level-headed discussions about his leadership. Yeah, okay, this is f***ing Reddit. You kidding? Inquirity shot him in the ass. While that was going on in the common area, others kept checking in on the madness, deciding whether or not they wanted to join, or not, like with Murky Way or Lola Pamela. The Demon Chief at least wanted to take a look. At some point, Ghost Cat must have dropped Wisely's comic because Demon Chief reached up to catch and read it. But it turns out the comic wasn't simplified because it was small, it was actually just a bunch of confusing scribbles. Although this at least confirmed that it wasn't loss. But the entrance didn't stay wide open. I'm not sure who called security, but a bouncer was posted at the door. And he wasn't about to let just anyone into the crossover anymore, as Mr. Doggy's character quickly learned. Sir Beef stepped up to bat, flashing their comic of the bodyguard of them flashing their comic to the bodyguard, and was admitted into the common area. Honey's Art 24 didn't need to prove their worth though, since they knew the secret password for getting in. The notoriously naughty nurses from Dr. Loops, Mona and Vero, showed up and were allowed to enter. Well, passing through the door proved a much bigger challenge given their body types. Between the bodyguard and the entrance getting held up, many others could only look in on the common area from the outside. Well, except for these adventurous ducks, who I can only assume are coming through an air vent. The girls from Off and Outer White Space insisted on their artistic integrity as they looked in from the outside, and the same goes for the armless duo from Tangled Fleshy Bones. But people weren't just looking in from the windows, they were looking in through the skylight, which this place apparently has. You seen this shit, Jack? This is where we can also find the adorable hippopotamus from the user Hippos and Toes pulling a Mission Impossible to try and grab some of those sweet upvotes, even if it doesn't go according to plan. People didn't have to resort to such extremes for long because the bouncer didn't stick around. I don't know, maybe he went on lunch. But hey, even Mona and Vero managed to get unstuck from the doorway. Eventually. Well, Kate from Satchadog decided it wasn't for her, even if Zach caught a glimpse of the snacks and punch inside. Honestly, probably the funniest comic to come out of this entire thing was Portuguese Geese's second comic. Oh great, another comic without a punchline. Oh! Lo and behold, Houston, we have a punchline. The neckbeard who caught sight of the punchline saw a long line of faceless individuals waiting in line for a fruity beverage. They seemed like NPCs at first, but it turns out that one of them had some heavy topics on their mind. They brought their punch to a seat to enjoy the collab while it lasted, wondering when they'll feel ready to join themselves. Out the corner of their eye, or lack thereof, Pizza Cake had been joined by Dot and other creators. But has anyone tried to cheer her up yet? Luckily, that's where Neftroshi's superhero, Spikehead Fireman, enters the fray. With a toasty marshmallow in hand, he offers her a snack in her trying time. That's not the only comfort she received. No, some rather frightening love was on its way. Having previously commented on Dot's comic, Hollering Elk promised that she would join the collab, and sure enough, her grisly and unsettling avatar appeared to witness the chaos unleashed upon our comics. It seemed like things were heating up between them, as Yapper 5013 and Stoic Lunatic could plainly see. At a safe distance from behind a screen, at least. Now that we've had a nice break for food and drink and a bit of cheering up, it's time to revisit something I mentioned earlier. Oh, hey, I'm Ara from the future. If you're still here, thank you so much for watching this far. I was blown away by the reception of my first video where I interviewed Pizza Cake and talked about how this whole event started. I love shedding light on people and topics that might not otherwise get the attention they deserve. If you haven't checked it out, I went much more in depth about the behind the scenes and the implications of this whole crossover event, and I would hugely appreciate anything to boost the algorithm. Sharing the video, subscribing, anything is great. Alright, sorry for the interruption. Let's get back to the insanity. So, you know how I said we were going to keep that our comics multiverse theory in our back pocket? Well, here it is, coming back out for a second. While the party was going on, something whirred to life. An android called Metatron activated its Community Protection Protocol. It locked on to the upvote heat map generated by the event. The android started hammering away at the wall, barreling into the common area to reassure Pizza Cake and everyone, you are loved. This could have been a funny random event if the multiverse idea wasn't revisited by user Irisi. Sai was lurking in the corner of the common area, secretly wishing that they had caused the chaos. However, after seeing characters like Quite Adept's Blocky Person, Addy, Natrix, and Hollering Elk, Sai wondered what kind of place the common area even was. They offhandedly mentioned being able to actually hear the colliding art comics multiverse. Later, after everything was wrapped up, the mysterious people responsible for Metatron were seen discussing the event and talking about how they were tracking the universes active in our comics. What does this all mean? Well, I think it just means that the larger art comics universe is complicated. But hey, look, there's an indecisive cat at the door. By this point, it was getting late in the event's lifespan, at least in internet time, and Ninja and Pirate were starting to worry about missing the entire thing. And while user Wellcryfish would have loved to arrive sooner, they were spending the past 3 days in Reddit jail and only just got out. However, he at least managed to see the tail end of the crowd still celebrating. After this though, things did die down. The Lurkers left the common area, many characters returned to their own standalone comics. Marshbars 777 was at least able to catch this short-lived after-party, but Crazy Nomenclature, Junjun OT 69th, and Columns Comics weren't so lucky. Columns Comics at least had a very important excuse as to why he was late. And even later after all of that, Thumble's comic arrived, but fully admitted to missing the entire thing. Partly because they weren't sure how legal the whole crossover was to begin with, but I have to ask, what would have happened anyway if the art comics crossover was illegal? We're a bunch of online cartoonists. Do you really think we have the money to litigate? So, we've got the common area, the hallway and door, Red Dot's podium, the vent the ducks came through, a couple windows, a skylight, a punchline, but there's one more detail I haven't mentioned. There's also cameras in this place. While most of the crossovers happened within the common area, there were plenty of characters observing what was going on from their phones or PCs. In terms of the ongoing narrative, most of them could take place at any time, so we're gonna go into a lightning round. Florida Dirty Dog and this user had some criticisms, while According Exit's character caught wind of the karma storm. Elfie Ennis literally just imagined Ellen in the Family Guy death pose and left. Dangerous Scholar couldn't think of a reason to join. Hiyoshi Kitsune joined just to feel happy for a few minutes. Salty Nutella got distracted by YouTube videos. Honey's art scrolled right on by. Nina observed dramatically from afar. Dr. X from Voxlings jumped in on sending Pizza Cake internet points, even if he had a lot left over after the fact. And I Have Problems Law was already getting into merchandising with a custom print Yu-Gi-Oh! Trading card. Whew. Okay. Hey, me again. There was technically a follow-up to the Nina Lives Alone comic, and a now removed post from Fluid Ad. There was this, and it's kind of incomprehensible and vaguely threatening. Nina, if you're listening to this, if I were you, I'd
run.
Some of the observers didn't stay observers, though. Many of them saw what was going on and later went to join themselves. Casual Deviant, Mockingbird Box, and Grumpy Mashy all put out comics with characters who would eventually join the chaos. Why only some of the observers? Well, like I said, there's cameras, and at 1600 hours on August 17th, this was the image observers were seeing, and clearly it spurred several of the late arrivals to rush to the R-Comics common area. You can even see Pizza Cake feeling much better, using Gary as a hacky sack with Red Dot and Hollering Elk. But this screen cap was far more important than just a glimpse into what was happening. This whole event was an unprecedented thing. It deserved to be immortalized in some way, and After Death Comics took it upon themselves to do just that. Off in some unknown dark manner, After Death's character shuffled through the snow. Upon entering, they arrive at an awards room to hang the picture. Every character involved in the crossover up to that point was present, big or small. After Death definitely established a unifying point in all of this. Their comic captured the event so well that several commenters were asking Reddit mods to make it the official R-Comics banner. And so this picture immortalized the entire... Wait, did this just change? Hello, I'm Larry the Tadpole. Welcome to day 5 of the R-Comics impromptu crossover. As you can see, artists have been flooding in to join the meta. How long will the shenanigans go on for? Just how meta can this become? The sun's starting to set on the crossover event. The moon is rising, the stars are coming out. We followed the initial karma storm, the lurkers, the characters off behind Red Dot's podium, all the curious onlookers poking in their heads, everyone enjoying from afar, and the commemorative picture hung to remember all of this. But there was one last storyline that I was saving until now. Before everyone went back to their home comics, Official Blah's character had been observing from the skylight, seeing all the fun. He wanted to join in, but something was holding him back. What if he wasn't accepted? What if he wasn't high profile enough? What if he caught some of the harassment that had been going around? He slumped down in resignation, thinking it was better to stay out of it, even if it meant being alone. But then another user posted a comic following this. They came out to assure Official Blah's character with a simple message: you're not alone. This comic might not have the fanciest art or the cleanest lines, but I don't think the whole crossover could be summed up any better than that. The world of webcomics really is a community. Pizza Cake would post one final comic addressing the entire thing in a very tongue-in-cheek joke about how she opened up to everyone and we instead threw a party. And yeah, that was every related post I could scrounge up, every major happening in the event, and all the loose threads were tied up in a nice self-contained... Huh? Did I miss one? August 27th? That's like 2.5 weeks late! I guess I wasn't lying with my comic for this video. The R-Comics crossover won't stay buried. I tried to be as thorough as possible. Let me know if I somehow missed your comic. Alright, well, there. I think I covered pretty much every detail there was to cover. Well, oh, yeah. Pizza Cake apparently summoned a Godzilla knockoff at one point. I don't think that was ever addressed. Oh well, I doubt that'll come back to bite us in the ass. 81 artists, 89 different comics. This was a bigger project. I'm shocked that editing it all down, it only came out to like 20 minutes. But yeah, welcome to the end of the video. Thanks for watching all the way to the end. I did say that I have another interview in the works. I'm really excited about this one, and I think you guys are gonna like it too. And her art style definitely toes the line between horrific, but the kind that you can't look away from. Kind of the perfect webcomic artist interview with Halloween coming up. So yeah, hope you look forward to that, and I'll catch you on the flip side. See ya!